The Dr. Terri Show is presented by Evexias Health Solutions. Evexias Health Solutions is an emerging leader in the integrative medicine on a mission to positively impact people's lives through the transformation of healthcare. Evexias educates and trains practitioners on the new, innovative, integrative therapies that support a preventative care model that drives vitality as you age. You can learn more about Evexias Health Solutions and many of the healthcare topics we discuss on the Dr. Terri Show at Evexias.com. That's EVEXIAS.com, as well as find a provider near you. Now here's today's episode. Hey everybody, Dr. Terri here. So, in all of these episodes that you've seen so far, if you've listened to what we're saying when we're talking about prevention and disease prevention and wellness, there seems to be a common thread of three key things that we can start doing today and changing our lifestyle and helping to shift our trajectory of chronic disease and really start preventing some of these chronic diseases. And the three things that we always talk about, whether it's preventing dementia, preventing cancer, childhood illnesses, any chronic disease processes, are: what are we eating? Are we sleeping? And are we moving our bodies? And those sound really simple. And we talk about them and we say, okay, well, we got to have a healthy lifestyle. We have to have a healthy food choices. Well, I'm going to break down these three topics in a really short amount of time. But the first thing I'm going to break down today is this healthy food choices. What does that even mean? We're so marketed to. One of the things, I'm just going to talk to you right now like I talk to my patients when we're talking about this topic. Really, if you can just think about it as, if I can't pick it off a tree, pull it out of the ground, or kill it, meaning some sort of animal protein, that's a general rule of thumb that maybe should stay away from that the majority of the time. So basically, in a nutshell, that means try to stay away from packaged processed foods. Now, I know it's really challenging in this day and age, and we're blowing and going, and we've got a lot going on, and we need something quick. But what I can tell you is, if you're really committed to your health and you're really committed to your family's health, one of the greatest things you can do is have a meal prep day. And this can be really fun for families. Sunday evenings or Sunday afternoons, this is our meal prep day. And you can prep different foods for the week. I have some patients that will grill meats, for the week, just to have readily available: some free-range organic chicken, some grass-fed organic steaks or meat, things like that. Maybe pre-cook some shrimp, things like that. Make sure when you are eating seafood that it is wild caught. This is so important. We haven't really gotten into a lot of the conversations yet, but we will, about wild caught fish and free range chickens and grass-fed, and grass finished beef. It's so important because seafood, fish, shrimp, salmon, all of that, chickens, cows, buffalo, bison. In the wild, these animals don't eat corn and grain. And we're feeding them a diet in highly processed corns and grains. So you might have heard us talk about, things that the mother eats and does, transferring to the womb. Well, the same thing happens in animals. It transfers into the meat, and it can cause very inflammatory meats. The other thing that happens is, because these animals are grouped together really closely in pens or in farms, if it's, salmon, there's a lot of, it's a breeding ground for infections, right? Tons of bacteria. So what do? They put antibiotics in the feed. So I haven't ever really heard of salmon. Somebody said the other day, is like, well, I saw that there's organic salmon. What does that mean? That probably means that farm-raised salmon was fed organic grain full of antibiotics. So these are just little nuances and little changes just to kind of think about. But food prep days are really, really important. Cutting up celery and carrots and having quick snacks like that, radishes, broccoli, fresh vegetables, that if you're craving a crunch, you can go to that instead of a bag of potato chips. Now, the number one thing you can do is just not even have a pantry full of processed food. When I remodeled my kitchen about 4 years ago, and one of the things I did was I did not build a pantry. I have a small pantry pull-out cabinet for things like nut butters and olive oils and, condiments, things like that, and, brown rice and certain pastas and things. But by and large, we don't have a big pantry that's full of quick grab, bars and snacks and things like that. Very different from, when my kids were younger and, we had a big, what I call the Costco pantry with, big boxes and cases of packaged processed food. So getting rid of the processed food, trying not to even buy it. And so it's not tempting because, the first week of purging some of these things out of your diet, it can be hard because, again, remember, these foods are highly laden with chemicals that are highly addictive, that were created that way intentionally. So you'll continue to crave them and continue to purchase them. So the first week, like going off anything, is going to be really challenging. Sugar is the most highly addictive thing that we put in our bodies every day, and it comes in many forms and it's hidden. It's not so obvious. You might think you're doing a good job by staying away from sugary sodas, but that sparkling apple juice that's all natural and 100% fruit juice except for the added high fructose corn syrup, that's a lot of sugar. And sometimes I was just reading on some cans that, the sugar amount in a can of apple juice is the same and sometimes more than even a Coca-Cola. So just because you feel like it's not a Coca-Cola, it's apple juice, it's natural, it still has a lot of sugar. Same with orange juice. So paying attention to the processed food, paying attention to the sugars, and trying to pay attention as much as possible. And I know it's sadly shouldn't be this way, but really working on changing this in our country, that organic foods are more expensive. It's a known fact. The reason is because the non-organic foods that are sprayed with pesticides and that are GMO'd grains and things like that, they can produce these foods in mass quantities, and it's a lot more profitable. That's really the bottom line. Organic foods, because they're not using pesticides, they tend to lose more crops because they're not using genetically modified organisms in their crops. They aren't producing these crops that are just big crops very fast. It takes longer to grow organic food, so it is a little more expensive. But even if you are just buying regular everyday vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, whatever, you can really soak that in some water, clean it really good, get as much of that pesticide off as possible. You're really going to make some gains. So obviously we'd love if you could get organic as much as possible. That's great. That's preferred. But in a lot of cases, it's not. And in some cases, people don't have access or they don't have a grocery store near them that might carry some organic food. So let's break this down one more time with the food. Let's try to cut out as much as possible anything you open in a package. Just get it all out of your pantry, and fill your pantry with, I don't know, flowers and vases or, things that aren't food. Use it as a storage closet, So getting rid of those processed foods, really start paying attention to hidden sugars in foods, high fructose corn syrup. And then, of course, seed oils. We've talked about seed oils. It's so hard because we think, well, gosh, that's what I cook with. But you can cook with avocado oil. There's certain olive oils that you can cook with high heat. And then ghee is an amazing option. Also, something that's really coming back around. I wish it wasn't so expensive, but full fat oils like tallow, like beef tallow and pork tallow. Those are they're actually really good for you. So seed oils like your canola oils, your safflower oil, your sunflower oil, if you can kind of purge those as much as possible, that's really you're going to really do a lot for your inflammation. So switching with coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil and tallows, you're going to do just amazing cooking with those things. Fresh fruits, in moderation. Fruit is really important because it has a lot of good nutrients, it has a lot of fiber, but we want to eat fruit seasonally, and we want to eat small amounts of it. When our ancestors used to have to go forage for berries, it took a lot of work to get the equivalent of a pint of berries, right? Well, now all we have to do is just go open the fridge and we have a pint of berries. So eating these things in moderation, fruit is good and berries are good for you, but sitting and eating a whole pint is probably too much sugar. Think about what bears do to get fat for the winter. Well, they go out and eat a lot of berries. That's all they're eating. So limiting your sugar, limiting your fruits, core fruits are great, like apples. They have a lot of fiber. Pears have a lot of fiber. So it's really just going to have to be retraining your taste buds, retraining your family. And I promise you, once you start putting in these little bitty changes here and there, the next thing you know, your family is going to be more engaged, less tired, sleeping better, wanting to get up and move, because food can make you want to, it really should energize you. But a context clue is after you eat a meal, if you feel tired and sluggish and run down like you want to take a nap, you probably ate some foods that weren't a good choice. I hope these little tips helped you, and stay tuned because we're going to talk about sleep and we're going to talk about moving our bodies in the next little video shorts.